All right, I want to call the January 18th, 2024 meeting, the Murfreesboro City Council to order. If you will, if you'll bow with me, and then we'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, we have a lot to be thankful for. Lord, I thank you for all the hard workers who've been working nonstop over the last 3 or 4 days. I thank you for their safety. We continue to pray for protection over them as they're working out in the cold. Lord, I thank you for our emergency service providers and all those who do everything they can to keep our residents safe. Lord, be with us. I pray that this weather that's coming in will be very minimal, and Lord, that you continue to bless and watch over our city. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move. I don't think we have anyone who signed up for public comments. All right, we'll move to action items. We have ordinance 24001, fiscal year 24 budget amendment. This is the second and final reading.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Vice Mayor Shacklett? Aye. Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye, and I meant to say this. Bill was standing here before we started the meeting, and this is not televised, or at some point I guess it goes on.
It's recorded.
But we'll do this publicly at our next council meeting. But comparing streets in other municipalities to streets in the city of Murfreesboro, Raymond Hillis and his team have done a outstanding job, and so give them a round of applause. There'll be a better time to do that, but I know that all the car washes are thankful for Raymond and his team as well. So. All right, we'll move to item 2, purchase of property in the runway protection zone. Chad.
Yes, Mayor and members of the City Council, we have another opportunity to purchase a property, two properties, this time on 1810 and 1812 Harold Lane. The cost for both units is $720,000. We'll use the airport fund for now to cover the cost of that. This will be our 4th property out of the 8 that were identified in the airport layout plan for purchase to clear the runway protection zone. Be ready for any questions if you have them.
There's no questions. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Vice Mayor Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to ARPA funding update and reallocation.
Thanks. Karen Lampert, Grant Manager, here to present a quick update on ARPA funding and also to request approval for some reallocation of funding. Here we go. So just to give you a brief timeline of the ARPA funding and where it started and where we're at with it. The funding came through the American Rescue Plan, which was voted in on March 11, 2021. We received notice of our allocation on May 10th of 2021, which was a little over $24.1 million. And we did receive those payments in 2 installments. We put together a proposed spending plan based on the Treasury's approved spending of those funds and presented that to Council in February of 2022, which it was approved. So those projects included a $10 million standard revenue replacement request, premium pay, hiring a contractor to do the grant management and monitoring, the Town Creek project, as well as 2 outside strategic partnership projects, as well as the purchase of a preschool for the city schools. Where we're at now, our deadline to get those monies expended or obligated is the end of this year, December 31st, 2024. So taking a look at what we've spent to date. So the standard revenue replacement was a $10 million. So the Treasury had provided an avenue for local governments to replace any lost revenue. Originally, they had that set up as a formula that you had to go through. Then they changed their allocation and said you can take a base rate of $10 million if you choose, as opposed to doing the formula to identify lost revenue. So that was where that $10 million came from. So far, we've spent a little over $3.6 million, which has been done with the police department, fire department, and Parks and Rec projects, leaving a little over $6 million. Premium pay reimbursement, that was allocated in August of 2021. And so that was to pay essential workers for their work during the COVID epidemic. That we originally estimated it to be around $2 million. It came in just a little bit under $1.9 million, so that left a balance in that category. Town Creek, we've allocated $9,251,000 has been spent to date. We're still on target to expend out the remaining portion in that project. Our strategic partnerships, we had allocated $1.1 million for a contract with Volunteer Behavioral Health to provide co-responder services with Murfreesboro Police Department, and then with the city schools to provide a tutoring program. And the majority of that funding has been spent out as well. Community development is the $1 million that was spent for the purchase of the building for the preschool project for city schools. And then the grant monitoring and management. We weren't sure how in-depth this project would be because it was also new. So we allocated $1.1 million towards contracted services to assist in making sure that we were on target and tracking with all the reporting requirements and expenses. As you can see, we still have quite a bit of funds remaining in that category, which is part of our reallocation request. Any questions on that? So what we've accomplished so far with the money that we've spent out, we've been able to purchase new vehicles and equipment for public safety. We've done some small Parks and Rec facility improvements. Again, the purchase of the preschool building. We've laid the groundwork for the Town Creek project, so we anticipated that the remaining bulk of those funds will be expended out because we're ready to move forward with the project bid. And of course, the strategic partnership with Volunteer Behavioral Health, which is going really well, and then the tutoring program with city schools and what they've been able to accomplish. So that leads us to the request to council to consider our capacity to reallocate some of these funds to make sure that they get expended out appropriately within the time frame. Our standard revenue replacement of $10 million, our remaining balance is 6.3. Initially, that was considered the least restrictive category from the U.S. Treasury, but since then they've implemented some reporting and requirement changes which have hindered some of the projects that we had originally outlined for the use of those funds. So because of that, we are asking that the remainder of those funds just be switched over to public safety payroll, as opposed to the original projects that we had defined within that category. The small amount left over from premium pay, we would like to increase the total project cost of Town Creek and put that money towards it. Stormwater infrastructure, adding that $990,000. We're trying to keep this project below $10 million because of the additional reporting requirements and things that kick in when projects hit over $10 million. With strategic partnerships, We had originally allocated $500,000 to volunteer behavioral health. We kind of overestimated the budget for that project, and so in working with them, we've identified that there's approximately $156,000 that hasn't been spent to date. So given that consideration, we would like to move that over to city schools for their tutoring project to continue. They were able to expend that money out fairly quickly, and so we identified that there's still an ongoing need to provide that service. So just doing an internal shift in that category. Community development, again, was the $1 million for the preschool project. And then there's, as you can see, we still have a large amount of money left over for the grant management contract. So we want to take out $900,000 and move that into Town Creek. And then the $6,000 is just the change because we rounded up in our presentations of the budget to 24.1. So that's just the remainder of what we actually received. So that'll go into the Town Creek project as well. So with that in mind, this is kind of what the new allocation, the revised spending plan would look like. Standard revenue would remain the same. Premium pay would be reduced. Town stormwater infrastructure would be increased. Grant monitoring management would be decreased, and then we would absorb the balance into the full cost of the project. So with that, we have a proposal in front of council for us to be able to reallocate the funding within the spending plan.
Is this to be expended, and, I mean, they have to be expended by 2026, right? So is this-
Obligated.
Is this
Just
to 2026, or is this just for this coming?
inflation goes.
So we either have to have it physically spent out, or we have to be in a contract
To spend.
to spend it. So there are terms of obligation.
But the
It does
spend,
have to be spent by December 31, 2026. We have to be obligated by December 31, 2024.
oh, okay.
With the contract.
It's like a 1030.
So that's why we're adjusting the spending plan so that we'd be in compliance for this year.
Right.
And the public safety equipment would still get funded. It would just get swapped to being funded from general fund, since payroll is already budgeted to come from general fund. So we'll use the grant money to pay the public safety payroll, and then move those funds over to the public safety equipment. So they're not losing anything on their projects. It's just making it easier to spend down that grant money.
So the standard revenue replacement, that $6 million that's left over, that goes into the general fund? Is that?
Right.
So for-
Because we found out that payroll costs were eligible for public safety, so it
Right.
made sense because we can easily say that's been spent already.
Okay. Nothing like taking federal borrowed money and us spend it, so we can pay double on milk costs and everything else that we're paying right now, but thank you. Sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox. But
On that note, so moved.
Sean's moving. Is
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Or sorry, please call the roll. I'm still mad.
He's brewing. Water. Vice Mayor Shacklet. Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you for your hard work on this. I know it's been hard to keep up with, just like our taxes. This meeting's adjourned. All right, we'll move to Reeves Rogers additional professional services contract. Scott?
Morning, Mayor, members of the council. I'm here on behalf of city staff. Recommendations to seek your approval for Reeves Rogers School Edition professional service agreement contract with Johnson and Bailey in the amount of $135,116. On January 9th, 2024, the Murfreesboro City School Board approved the contract for professional services with Johnson and Bailey. The project will consist of a 4,000 square foot administrative addition, 600 square feet of renovations, a new exterior canopy, and aesthetic improvements to the existing building. The renovations and modifications to the school will also provide a secure access entry point and upgrades for administrative and student support. The Johnson & Bailey architect proposal recommends an estimated construction budget of $2.2 million. The school addition was approved by the school board and city council through CIP process. This will serve council priorities by maintaining public safety, by increasing school security, by creating a more controlled access point to the school campus. The funding source that will be used is the county shared bonds. I thank you for your time and can answer any questions at this time.
Really exciting to see this project get to this point. It's been needed, and so I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Ms. Overwater?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet? Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Thanks, Scott. All right, we'll move to Resolution 24R01. This is a school's budget amendment. Director Duke.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This afternoon, I'm presenting a resolution for your approval to amend the city schools' general purpose and ESP budget. Both of these budget amendments were approved by the city school board on January 9th. In our general purpose fund, the amendment budgets $250,000 in new state TISA revenues that will be able to fully fund a previously approved school security project that was originally planned to be funded over multiple years. In our ESP fund, this amendment budgets $194,000 from our audited fund balance, ESP fund balance, to fund a new playground at Mitchell Nelson Elementary School. This project was previously approved by the school board and city council through the CIP process, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If there are none, I'll move for approval.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Overwater?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Trey, thank you very much. Well, y'all have had a busy 3 or 4 days. Trying to figure out. Yeah. All right, we'll move to workshop items. We have CIP transfers. Ms. Brown.
These are just the monthly report on CIP transfers that finance has done. If there are no questions, nothing else needs to be done.
Any questions?
Nope.
All right, we'll move to the 2023 sanitary sewer allocation report. Mr. Gore. Cheers.
They were out of Celsius.
Oh, no.
All right. Mayor and council, thank you for the opportunity to present this. This is our 4th annual report. I know it's exciting. Everybody looks forward to the after Christmas present of the sewer allocation report. So as I say in the header here, a flush wrapped in a rainstorm inside a season. That's kind of how the sanitary sewer operates. It's very weather dependent and rainfall dependent. And the fact that we only had about 12 inches of rain, I think, in the last 4 months of the year really kind of make our inflow numbers look really good, which is a good thing. But you always got to kind of factor in the rainfall here. So, real quick executive summary. So the sanitary system is in good shape, as is the sewer rehab program is paying off big time. And so we're getting new available connections by reclaiming existing capacity within the system. Creating new connections by funding collection system and wharf plant upgrades is getting more expensive. Inflation and materials are definitely going up. The majority of our committed or approved connections of around 6,850 by planning have not secured capacity by putting a deposit down to reserve the capacity for their projects. They've been approved on paper, but they haven't put down the 10% reserve fee to actually call them committed connections. So the WRF has the ability to handle the hydraulic flows with the increase in connections, but will be marginal or unlikely in meeting some discharge permit limits into the West Fork Stones River as they are currently permitted. There are still areas or hot spots where sewer connections will be constricted, and development must coordinate with the Water Resources Department for capacity assurance. I just sent out, or Valerie just sent out recently, a large area, Memorial Boulevard between Compton Road and DeJarnett Lane. We're going through the assessment of that capacity right now, so we've kind of suspended any new development submittals. Obviously, a lot of the projects that are already permitted or have been approved are still going through the process and won't be held up by this study. So a real quick review of the basics. The assets, we call this inside the fence. The water resource facility is our bucket. That's the treatment plant. And outside the fence, we've got pump station pipes, manholes, and these are the pipes or the straws or whatever you want to call them that kind of flow everything into the bucket. We do operate a separate sewer system. That really means that the stormwater system is separate from the sanitary sewer system. So you can see from this diagram, so we do have the ability to convey raw sewage through the piping system and pump station system. It's expandable. It's very expensive to expand it. What we call our WRF, for the wastewater plant, it can be expanded as well. It's very expensive to expand the plant. We did expend over $40 million in 2017 for that expansion. The one thing that is very difficult to expand or can't be expanded is the West Fork Stones River. That's fixed by nature. So that's where we run into a little bit of an issue with TDEC, is as we treat more water or treat more effluent into the river, they need to agree that that river can assimilate or handle what we're putting into it. I talked about wet weather. This is kind of a generic hydraulic. This kind of shows flows through an annual year, and you can see the green line kind of represents our summer months, and the red line kind of represents the average of our winter months. So in 2020, there was about a 2.8 times difference between winter flows and summer flows. That's in essence due to the rain. 2021 was about 2.3, 2022, 2.6, and this last year we're right at 2.0. So you can kind of see we're looking at somewhere between 400 and 530 gallons per connection. Connection is defined as an apartment, a townhome, a single-family home, a commercial establishment, food service, or retail shop. We currently have 53,350 residential or other facility connections, about two-thirds of the system, about 26,000 apartment connections. It's about a two-thirds, one-third split. So these show the flows. This is kind of the summer flows again on the rain. As you see the rainfall, the number of inches on a monthly average at the bottom, how that affects our flows into the plant. And you can see what happens in the wintertime for those same type of rain event in the winter increases the flows to the plant significantly versus in the summer months. Summertime, obviously, you've got plants, you've got evapotranspiration, you've got things drinking that water and the soil accepting that water versus the winter. So this again shows how sewer rehab is gaining back capacity. When we really started our rehab program in 2008, we've seen this. We do factor in rainfall in this percentage, but you can kind of see here at the bottom, 20.1% is this last year. That's abnormally good. But also showing you that since 2008, we've spent almost $27 million on sanitary sewer rehab projects. So we're glad to see there's a return on that investment. So reviewing the as-is versus the to-be condition. Currently, as is, we have 3 main pump stations. Well, we call this one our main pump station. It's right by the Water Resource Recovery Facility. The yellow area flows to it. The green area flows to Overall Creek, which we just upgraded. And the red area flows to our Southwest Regional Pump Station. This is kind of a fishbone diagram, or just a diagram of how certain basins flow into others. So a lot of our system analysis is based on upstream capacity. You have to do some subtraction, right? So you see these flows accumulate and aggregate, and so you have to do a little bit of math. Those are the 3 pump stations that we talked about. Don't really concentrate so much on the numbers here. I've just tried to color code. Dark green is really good. Light green is good. Yellow is okay, and red is, needs improvement. So our current as-is model shows a few areas of I would call mid-level capacity with some, some lower-level capacity issues. Again, just, these is in your report. I don't need to necessarily go through all this with you, but just the color coding is really kind of the illustration here. So this kind of shows it, that those same numbers just based on areas. I've tried to put in this area, the Florence area, Med Center. I've just tried to create Salem, Barfield, Joe B. Jackson, Blackman, just to kind of give you a point of reference to see where we have current capacity, high levels of capacity versus lower levels of capacity. The 2B pump stations, we're adding, this is where we want to spend quite a bit of money to get there, but we're looking at our Cherry Lane, future Cherry Lane corridor pump station. As we used to call this the Northeast Regional, but I'll show in a little exhibit here where we've moved that. This is the future configuration. So we're looking at a total of about $77.6 million in upgrades. A lot of that has already been expended. 12.7 has been spent on the Overall Creek pump station. That's pretty much completed. And we've spent about $2.1 million on the Salem Highway sewer area. And the remaining of that is committed, so it's actively under construction. Valerie told me the other day it may be a situation where those sewer upgrades may be a year ahead of schedule, similar to Overall Creek. The contractor is doing a really, really good job. So this is again, the color coding is really more to pay attention to on the 2B model. So you can kind of see spending that money does change a lot of those yellows and reds to dark green. There are still a couple of a couple of reds and a yellow there. So the 2B condition adds about 22,000 connections. That's a 30% increase of our current connection capacity. This is a little bit of a well, this shows you the geographic areas of where, again, we've got that high capacity versus lower capacity. This is where we've obligated, or we've got money planned in our CIP. These numbers will change. That 14 million, we've got 11.9 remaining. At the wet weather capacity, that number's gone up a little bit. Overall Creek, 13.6. We've only got about 900,000 remaining in that project to spend. And this one is where 250,000 down at the County Farm Pump Station. And this one is where we moved the Northeast Regional at 20.5. We're moving that up to the Cherry Lane corridor, and it's now about 33.3 million. So that kind of shows you where we're putting our money to gain that capacity. Let's see. Oh, yes. This just kind of shows you the metrics of where we are as far as total connected and approved is the dark green. The available as-is connections is in the light green, and what we would be adding as far as capacity goes if we spend that capital to make those capital improvements. This shows you about what it costs. When I said it's increasing, we've been around $2,000 to $2,600 per new connection from 2020 to 2022. We're now getting up to about $3,500 per new connection, and that's just costs are increasing, and we're updating the CIP. It's not that we're really adding that many new projects. It's just the numbers are the expenses are going up. So review of sewer connection growth. This shows you kind of our connections and how we've grown from 3% to 2.5% to 2.1%. That's non-apartment connections. You got apartment connections, and we've kind of seen about anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5% growth in apartment connections over the last 4 years. Our committed changes a little bit. The non-apartment connections, we've had a pretty significant drop on what's been taken or what's accounted for as approved through Planning Commission. And the apartment complexes, again, we see there was First year was a pretty high increase. In the last couple of years, we've seen a decrease in what's been approved on paper. This is where our high growth area is in the Florence and the Blackman and Salem area. Those represent about 52% of the total approved sewer connections since 2017. So half of our growth really is kind of west of the interstate, our projected approved growth. And so the takeaways are the overall Creek Pump Station upgrade, it began in spring of '22, and it was completed by the end of 2023. It's a big deal. The Northeast Regional Pump Station is recommended to be replaced by a series of pump stations to serve the new Cherry Lane corridor between 840 and Memorial. Our wet weather capacity upgrades at the wharf are critical to handle the proposed pump station upgrades. We're hoping to bid out the wet weather upgrades here in the second quarter of 2024. County Farm Pump Station needs to be monitored closely, and we really think it has more capacity than the model indicates. And where staff is continuing to work with TDEC to expand the WRF's NPDES permit limits, and we've got an executive session to maybe go over that with you a little bit more on where we're at in that process. So if you have questions regarding where we are with TDEC, you may want to hold those just for till after the meeting, and Mr. Jones and I will be prepared to answer some of those. So, questions? I know in the end I show about 4 maps of appendix. I won't go through all that, where it shows kind of as is versus to be conditions side by side. Those were really just to show you, again, with those improvements, what areas are most impacted. But if you have any questions, I'll be available to answer them.
Darren, is it safe that we can use your chart to get a pretty accurate growth rate of what we're seeing inside the city? I mean, we talk about population and you hear all the talk about growth and new growth.
Right.
But if you're developing in the city,
yes,
we're not really doing a lot of alternate sewer systems. You've got to have a sewer connection, right?
Correct. This should line up pretty much well with building and codes and some of the other metrics that we're maintaining.
So what I'm saying is that, we went from 52,281 residential customers to 53,353. So that was about a 2% increase.
Right.
And then when you look at apartments, there were only 150 units that were added. 160 units?
There's been some additional, that one, I need to go back and check that metric, because I think we've added some, so we take that, so when we approve it and it's built, we take it off the committed list and add it to the built list, yes.
Okay.
But then there's others that are added to the committed. But yes, for the most part, we've not, the apartment complex is what's been in the queue for the past few years, has been what's been in the queue. There's not been anything really new coming across our.
I just think it's, if you look at non-apartments and then you look at apartments, those numbers have significantly decreased.
Right.
Over the last 3 years. But
Absolutely.
the growth rate is really less than 2% of what you would say new growth that's coming in.
That's correct. Yes.
Of the 6,800 approved connections, it says that you pay a deposit and secure that?
Yeah, so it goes through, so the way the sewer allocation ordinance reads, and it requires, in order for you to really reserve capacity, we'll use the word reserve or secure it, there is a 10%. So if you have a 200-unit complex or a 10-unit complex, I'll do the 10. So a 10-unit complex is going to be about $25,500. In order to reserve that capacity for 2.5 years or 30 months, you need to put 10% down. So $2,550.
That was my question, is
what's
the term of that?
It's 30 months, 10%, and you can do that up to 4 times. So you can, if you don't do anything within that 2.5 years or 30 months, and you want to keep that reserved capacity, you can pay another 10%. And another 10, so you can do up to 4, so you can reserve it up to 10 years.
I got you.
And all that goes towards crediting you towards so if you do it 4 times or 40%, at the time you do build it or do make the connections, you're only going to be required to pay the remaining 60%. But that is, if you don't do that, even though you're approved on paper through the planning process, you really haven't reserved the sewer capacity for your project. So some people will take that serious and some don't.
Well, I mean, what it does is give us some way to forecast what capacity is going to be.
That's right.
That's really why you're doing that.
That's right. It's to make sure that the folks that are doing the projects are serious about moving forward with. We've had people, when we started this sewer allocation in 2019, they would bring a approved sewer customer from 15 years ago, and we just can't have those dangling for 15 years, and we really did it to make sure we put terms on it and people know that that's required.
It's good business. It's good business.
Any questions for Darren? All right, Darren, thank you.
All right, thank you all very much.
All right, we'll move to the fiscal year 24 mid-year financial report.
I emailed y'all the report last week. It follows the same sort of pattern that I presented the last few years. Just gives you a good comparison between this year through November, December to last year. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. If you want to email me or call me later with questions, I'm happy to answer as well.
Aaron, I think it would be great to share some of the information that you sent to all of us regarding expenditures and how y'all did on expenditures and what you're anticipating on revenue.
Well, revenues are relatively flat. Some revenues are under budget or under where we were compared to last year, but expenditures are also low, so especially with payroll. So I don't see a serious issue with our budget with revenues being a little lower because we did anticipate that.
Okay, any questions for Aaron? All right, any questions on the November 2023 dashboard? All right, any other business from staff?
Do other business, special meeting, so we got to stick to the agenda.
Oh, I have one request.
Okay.
I saw Jamie last night at the alley, and I was telling her I was a nerd because I watched the Planning Commission meeting from last week. I'd like to get some information presented back to the council. There's a development that was coming to us that is in the Blackman area. And, I was listening to some of the comments about what's occurring in the Blackman area. But it would be great to get what we have planned on roads in that area, sort of what, even looking at Shelton Square, what has been discussed in the last 8 to 10 years, specifically with the Florence Road interchange, or the Florence Road where the old Blackman Market used to be, and there was a lot of discussion on other developments that we've had on that intersection. Also, it would be great to get an update on the school that's being built there on the Beatty farm where they sold their property.
Okay. They have a problem with the traffic for the school?
Yeah, the traffic count. So that was the thing I thought that was ironic, that one of the gentlemen got up complaining about traffic in the area, but my guess is that the school is going to generate way more traffic than anything that's out there, so it'd be good to get an update on that.
And that's a county school, right?
correct.
Yeah, that's a county school.
And his family sold the land to the county to build the school that he's complaining about the traffic for.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into the individual, but I think it is beneficial to talk about the road projects that are in that area, because, the discussion was on a 70-unit or 79 homes that are being built, but literally the property next door to it, the county just approved the grading plan and the site work for the school. They haven't approved the construction of the school yet, but it would be beneficial for us to understand the road improvements that are going to be done in that section of the Blackman Road, the discussions that we've had with the county regarding Blackman Road and the upgrades that we are talking about getting right of way to be able to work on Blackman Road. And then the other thing, Greg, I think it would be beneficial for y'all to maybe update us on. We don't get involved in the market very much, but there's a lot of discussion on affordability. I think it'd be good for us to understand sort of what's happening in that Blackman area regarding affordability. And then the last note I had, Craig, if Craig had sent a report that had asked a comparison of Murfreesboro's tax rate. There's a recent article or opinion in the Tennessean where they're talking about capping property tax increases and based on a percentage. And I'm not advocating for this at all. I think that's one of the reasons we had the discussion about selling MED years ago. But, you know, the lower your tax rate gets, we're at 94 cents right now or 95 cents.
95.26, yeah.
If future councils ever do have to have an increase, it's like a 3-cent piece of gum. You know, the 3-cent piece of gum goes to 5 cents, and that's a 47% increase. So the lower your tax rate is, the higher, anytime you adjust that tax rate, it's going to be percentage-wise. You know, we had to increase 37%. That was the big thing back in 2018, but our tax rate had gotten to 93 cents. So I think the discussion we're going to have as a council is, with equalization, the lower our tax rate gets, anytime that there's a discussion on having an increase, that percentage gets higher. And based on the number, I think Craig shared on a future school in 2025, 2026, and that number looking at $55 to $60 million plus an increase of $2 million roughly on our tax, on our operating budget. Aaron, that number is how much? Didn't we say it's 10 cents on our tax rate?
It's about 10 cents.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
It would be a 10-cent increase. So, you know, what's going to happen effectively is if the legislature does put caps on property tax rate, the only thing the cities can do to guard against future need, to guard against not being able to pay for future needs, is just to raise taxes every year. To you know, at some, maybe even up to the amount that is allowed, because otherwise, if you do have to build a school, you won't be able to pay for it. If equalization forces your tax rates down and you get to a point where you do have to raise taxes by an increase, people forget about not having to pay taxes for the last 10 years at a higher rate. But the cap is just going to force increases as you go.
We need to, the reason I say that, when I read that article, I think that's something that's being pushed by several people in the legislature right now. And if that comes across, we need to have a discussion as a council. You know, if there's a limit, and I'm not advocating for property tax increases, but if there is a limit put on that, when you have the growth of the school system or whatever else that we have, it could put us in serious issues with our bond rating. Not to mention that all of our bonds that we have currently have provisions in there for unlimited taxing authority.
Right.
And, so we could be in default, or not default, but we could be out of compliance with several of our bonds that we've already issued if we don't have that ability.
It's going to really depend on what the bills that go through. I haven't seen the bills yet this year. I haven't been able to find it. Last year, there was a proposal, never got out of Finance Committee, to limit tax and tax increases. It did accept bonding, which is odd because that's usually driving the most tax increase. You're usually not paying for, on property taxes, things with cash. You're paying for debt that you're issuing so you can get the cash. So the exception for, creating an exception for the bonds creates an exception that swallows the rule. So we'll see what this year's comes out, but it limited increases by 2%, 2 or 3% over the inflation rate, CPI inflation rate. That was last year's bill. We'll see if they mirror that coming up. It's not detrimental, but again, you know, you're forcing cities into a position. They'll be forcing cities into a position to just go ahead and make a rate increase because they won't be able to protect themselves in the future if they don't.
Sorry, I think it's beneficial we know what's coming across on that, because that could be a huge
Yeah, we'll be watching for that.
a huge deal for us. So we've got an executive session meeting that we need to go into in the conference room.
Right.
Do I need to, I'll adjourn this meeting? Yes. And then, okay. All right, we'll stand adjourned.